Hey everyone, so here is a little list that I put together showing the supplies that I used. I've listed my discount codes down below for Let's Resin products, so definitely check those out. Okay, starting out, we're going to need our mixing cup, some gloves, our mold, and your Christmas bulb. This is what makes the liquid core for the snail shell. You'll also want to cut the stem off so that it's nice and flat and makes it easier to seal with UV resin later. Also use plastic bulbs, guys. So I'm going to start out by mixing my epoxy resin. I'm using Let's Resin's epoxy resin. It is actually one of my favorite to use for epoxy art. It is a 2-part resin, and I am just going to do the shell first. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up 80 milliliters. After I created this, I found out that I only needed 60. So if you would like to replicate this yourself, then 60 milliliters is how much it uses to fill up the shell. I get asked quite a bit, how do I prevent bubbles in my resin, and I don't really have any surefire ways to prevent them, but I do have a few tips that I can share with you. Make sure you are scraping the sides and the bottoms very, very thoroughly. You also want to scrape your popsicle stick against the container and then continue to mix. By scraping your popsicle stick, it ensures that you mix both part A and part B thoroughly and evenly. If resin isn't mixed thoroughly, then it can warp, it can crack, or it could just not set up at all. So definitely take your time, scrape the sides, scrape the bottom, because this is going to be the most important part when it comes to resin art. Also guys, please take care of yourselves, wear your gloves, wear your respirator, protect yourself. Resin art can be fun, but you also need to take precaution. Now that my resin is mixed, I'm going to have it set for about 20 minutes. Okay, this has been sitting for about 20 minutes, and as you can see, it's pretty clear. I don't really even see that many tiny micro bubbles, and most importantly, it is warm to the touch through my gloves and through this cup. So it is definitely time to pour that, just as like a little precaution, because there are some grooves in detail work in the silicone and bubbles love to get trapped in those. So I take 91% isopropyl alcohol, and I will just kind of spray it around and make sure that, like, it's not drenched, but it definitely has a nice, like, coating, I guess is the word. I mean, you can kind of see it through the silicone. And then I am not sure how much this is actually going to take, so I just mixed 80 milliliters, and I'm going to kind of angle it and let it run down the side so that it doesn't create some bubbles. If I were to just like pour it straight down, it could possibly create some bubbles that will be difficult to get rid of. Hopefully 80 was enough, but this is a pretty good sized mold. So we'll find out more once I put the Christmas bulb inside. And see, there is no bubbles. But I'm going to kind of just rotate it around in the mold to make sure that the resin has reached where it's supposed to. Okay, now let's try this out. Yep, that was plenty. And actually, it's probably too much. I'll have to pour some of it out. You just kind of just set it in there. I'm going to go ahead and let this resin pull into the eyeballs of the snail. I didn't mean for it to, but since it's already down in there, I'm just going to kind of squeeze the mold where the eyes are. They are here and here. You just kind of squeeze it to make sure any bubbles that are trapped in there are able to escape. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and keep the resin from getting in the actual bulb. I'm going to pour some back out. And since this shell is it comes out a lot more to the left than it does the right, I'm going to kind of angle this so that resin can cure and fill up the shell completely. Again, you don't want to get resin down inside the bulb. And there's actually one bubble right here that I'm going to want to pop, but I don't want to use a torch or a lighter on it because it can cause your silicone to fuse to the resin. So I'm going to get that isopropyl and I'm going to spray it a couple times and hopefully, yeah, see, it's popped. Very minimal effort on that. I need to find something to wedge this underneath so that it's at an angle. Let me find a little mold real quick. Maybe this lid mold. No, not like that. Okay, so we got that angled down. Now I need to find another one to angle it. Lips. Let's try some vampire lips. Hopefully this works out, because this would be a really cool technique and I'll definitely be making more. It's not tall enough. I need a taller mold. This one perhaps. This one looks too tall. Actually, that might be perfect. All right, that's awesome. Here, let me get a close-up of it. Okay, so the resin's filled all the way to the top right here. And it looks like a lot of it has drained out of the head, because I didn't mean to fill the actual head of the snail yet. So I'm going to let this sit and cure for a couple hours until it is a tacky consistency. And see, I didn't even use the full 80 milliliters. I'll have to look at that a little closer to figure out how much I actually used. But so far, I'm very hopeful. So I'll come back in a couple hours when I am able to fill the rest of the mold. I let it cure longer than I intended to. I can still leave indentions with my fingernail, but it is not sticky whatsoever. Looking at it, it looks all even. It doesn't look like it's caught up on the side at all. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it with distilled water and cut up mylar sheets. Okay, so this is my ginormous piece of mylar that I'm going to cut up into strips. I think I might just do the regular. I'm not wanting to look for, like, all symmetrical and even rectangles or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and start chopping. And I'm already annoyed because it's stuck to me. But you get the idea, so I'm going to fast forward. Now I'm going to go ahead and bundle up all these little mylar pieces, and I am going to stick them down into the bulb. If you're wanting the mylar pieces to be able to move freely throughout the distilled water easily, then I would suggest cutting smaller pieces than what I did. After I made this, I discovered that it's kind of difficult to get the mylar to move around when you shake the snail. Now I'm going to grab my funnel and I'm going to put it inside this bulb. This will make it easier for me adding the distilled water. I spilled some water, and you definitely want to make sure that you dry that up because resin and water do not mix at all. I decided that I was going to try and make a plug for the bulb using UV resin. What I did was that I made a disc out of the UV resin, and I didn't let it cure fully, so it was kind of sticky, and I put it on top of the hole and used it like a band-aid or like a patch. I really wanted to try to limit how much air was inside the actual bulb itself. I just didn't want that big bubble floating around in there, but it's really a preference thing. I then used my UV light to actually fully cure the plug on top. I added another layer of UV resin on top of the UV plug just to make sure that it was all sealed nice. Okay, so I created a plug on it. It's not leaking. You can actually kind of see it moving, which is super cool. I'm super excited to finish it. For the actual snail's body, I wanted to use some of these chameleon flakes. It looks really pretty. Whether you use clear resin, white resin, or black resin. I think I'm going to go ahead and use white. And the one I'm actually using is hot pink chartreuse. So what I'm going to do is, these might fly everywhere because that's just what flakes do, but I'm going to gently pat some of these along the tail and the body. The reason I say gently is because you don't want to pull the resin away from the mold quite yet. So the white resin that I pour in this doesn't seep between the mold and the shell, because then it will cover all of the work we have done so far. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Now I'm gonna mix up some more Let's Resin. Again, I'm not sure on the quantity, but I will make a note of it to fill up the rest of it. The eyes got filled with clear resin whenever I had some spillage from this. So all I have is just the body. I know it's sped up here, but I really didn't want to torture you all with me just mixing clear resin again. I decided to use this white or silver looking mica powder by Sakura Pigments. It's actually listed in my Amazon storefront. I really like how silvery and shimmery it actually turned out looking. Now that this snail is fully cured, I'm going to go ahead and try and demold it. Since this was my first time using this mold, I was kind of cautious with it. I wasn't really sure what was the easier way to demold it. The eyes actually had me concerned since they are just kind of little pegs sitting on top. I wasn't wanting to break them off. So I took my time and definitely wiggled it around a lot, and it was actually very, very successful. And I am so freaking happy with how this turned out. I am one of those people who I definitely criticize the heck out of the stuff that I make, but this is gorgeous. Like I said earlier, the pieces didn't really float around like I wanted them to, but they definitely still move. You just kind of have to be a little forceful when you're shaking the snail. So let's just be thankful this isn't babies. I took these outside so that the sunlight can show off just how freaking gorgeous these things are. And I went ahead and I already started on another one, and I plan on sharing that tutorial next. So definitely subscribe and come visit me again. And with this one, I used mica powder. Again, there are definitely things I'd like to change, and I'll share those things with you in my next tutorial. So thank you guys for watching.